At the mating ceremony, the entire pack watched as the Alpha King made his choice. She stood there, heart racing, already knowing it would be her. After all, she had saved his life, again and again and again. But then, he walked past her and took her best friend's hand instead. Gasps filled the air. Her world shattered in silence. But what she did next brought an entire kingdom to its knees. The night of the mating ceremony was supposed to be hers. The air was thick with anticipation as wolves gathered under the full moon, their eyes fixed on the Alpha King. Tonight, he would choose his mate, the future Luna of the pack, and she was certain it would be her. Not because of her beauty, not because of her status, but because of everything they had shared in secret. Late nights, quiet promises, stolen moments no one else knew about. And the truth he would never believe, that every time he survived a battle he shouldn't have, every time death came close and somehow missed, it was her. She had been there, always, unseen, unclaimed, unrecognized. Because she was no ordinary wolf. She was the daughter of the moon goddess, and she had protected not just him, but the entire pack. Silently, selflessly. Until tonight. The Alpha King stepped forward, his gaze scanning the crowd. Her breath caught. This was it. But then, he walked past her and stopped in front of her best friend, a noble-born beauty, admired, desired, untouchable. I choose you. The words shattered something deep inside her. The crowd erupted. But she didn't cry. She didn't beg. Instead, she smiled. And in that moment, she took back everything she had ever given. Welcome to Alpha King Romance Diaries, where passion meets power and love always reigns supreme. This channel is your escape into powerful love stories, deep emotions, and irresistible alpha energy. Hit subscribe and join the kingdom. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Stay tuned, the fun is just getting started. The night of the mating ceremony arrived beneath a full, watchful moon. Silver light spilled across the pack grounds, bathing everything in a quiet, almost sacred glow. Wolves gathered in clusters, their voices low but charged with excitement. Tonight wasn't just another ceremony. Tonight, the Alpha King would choose his mate. And she stood among them, calm, steady, certain. Her fingers brushed lightly against the fabric of her dress, simple compared to the extravagant gown surrounding her. She didn't need jewels, she didn't need attention, because she already had something none of them did. Him. Her gaze lifted, finding him instantly. The Alpha King stood at the center of it all, tall, commanding, untouchable. His presence alone silenced the restless energy of the crowd. But to her, he wasn't just the Alpha. He was the man who had once pulled her into the shadows just to whisper her name like it meant something. The man who had looked at her, not as the overlooked girl everyone ignored, but as if she mattered. No one knew. Not about the nights they met in secret, not about the quiet promises spoken under the same moon now hanging above them, not about the way his voice softened when it was just the two of them. A faint smile touched her lips. This was just formality. It had to be. After everything they had been through, everything she had done, her chest tightened slightly. She remembered the war, the blood, the chaos, the moment he should have died. But he didn't, because she had been there, invisible, unseen, powerful, always protecting him, even when he never knew, even when he never asked. Her eyes softened as she watched him now. He would choose her. He had to. The crowd began to shift as elders took their places, their presence commanding silence. A low hum of anticipation spread through the air, thick and electric. The moment was here. Her heartbeat slowed instead of racing. She wasn't nervous. She was ready. Across the clearing, her best friend stood among the noble daughters, radiant, admired, everything the pack expected a Luna to be. But that didn't matter. Not tonight. Because this wasn't about appearances. This was about truth. And their truth was stronger than anything else. The Alpha King stepped forward. The entire pack fell silent. Her breath caught, just once. This was it. His gaze lifted, scanning the crowd, and for a brief, fleeting second, it lingered on her. Her heart whispered, "See?" A quiet certainty settled deep within her chest. There was no doubt, no fear, only knowing. Tonight, he would choose her. The silence stretched just long enough to feel sacred. Every eye in the clearing followed the Alpha King as he stepped forward, his presence pulling the air tight around them. The moon hung high above, witnessing everything. Her pulse echoed softly in her chest. Steady, certain. This was the moment. He moved. One step, then another. Closer. Her breath caught, but she didn't move, didn't need to. She already knew where he was going. To her. His gaze lifted again, and for a second, it met hers. Time stilled. A quiet warmth bloomed in her chest, fragile but real. See? But then, he kept walking. Past her. The warmth shattered before she even understood why. A ripple moved through the crowd. Confusion. Surprise. Her body went still. No, he wouldn't. But he did. He stopped in front of her best friend, radiant, perfect, expected. The kind of Luna the pack would celebrate. The kind of Luna she was never meant to be. "I choose you." The words fell like a blade. The world didn't shatter loudly. It didn't explode. It went silent. For a moment she heard nothing, saw nothing, felt nothing. Then the crowd erupted. Cheers, applause, approval. The sound crashed over her like a wave she couldn't escape. Her best friend gasped, eyes wide with shock before they filled with tears. Happy ones. The Alpha King reached for her hand, pulling her forward, sealing his choice in front of everyone. In front of her. A flicker of something crossed his face, just for a second. Something uncertain. Something almost searching. But it was gone as quickly as it came, replaced by certainty, by duty, by the choice he had made. Her fingers curled slightly at her sides, not trembling, not breaking, just still. Around her, whispers spread like wildfire. She really thought, of course he wouldn't choose her. It was always going to be the noble daughter. Each word landed, sharp, precise, but none of them cut as deeply as the silence inside her. Because she understood now, it had never been real. Not to him. Not the quiet nights, not the way he had looked at her, not the moments she had believed meant something. And everything she had done, every time she had stepped between him and death, every time she had given more of herself to protect him, he never knew. And now, he never would. Her chest tightened, something fragile cracking deep within. But no tears came, no sound, no reaction. Because the pain wasn't loud. It was quiet, heavy, final. Her gaze lifted slowly, settling on him one last time. He stood beside her best friend now, his chosen mate, while the pack celebrated around them. Untouchable, unreachable, a stranger. And in that moment, something inside her gave way. Not in pieces, but completely. Cleanly, as if it had never existed at all. She exhaled softly, and the last of her hope disappeared. The celebration roared around her. Laughter, cheers, applause. The pack surged forward, surrounding the Alpha King and his chosen mate, their voices filled with pride and approval. It was everything a mating ceremony was meant to be. Joyful, victorious, perfect. And yet, she stood untouched by it all. Still, silent, forgotten. For a long moment, she didn't move, didn't react, as if the world had already moved on without her. Then, she smiled. It was soft, beautiful, effortless. The kind of smile that should have meant acceptance, grace, surrender. But something about it felt wrong. Too calm, too steady, as if the pain that should have shattered her simply wasn't there. A few nearby wolves noticed. Their cheers faltered for just a second, because no one smiled like that after being broken. No one looked that composed after being humiliated in front of the entire pack. Her head tilted slightly, her gaze sweeping over the scene before her. The Alpha King, her best friend, the life that had just been chosen. And then, her eyes met his again. This time, he didn't look away immediately. Something in her expression caught him, held him. Not anger, not grief, not even disappointment. Just stillness. Deep, unreadable stillness. A faint crease formed between his brows, as if something, some instinct buried deep within him was whispering that something wasn't right, that something had just shifted. But the moment broke. The crowd pulled him back. The celebration swallowed him whole, and whatever he thought he saw faded. Her smile never wavered, not as she turned away, not as she stepped back, slipping out of the circle of light and into the quieter edges of the gathering. The noise grew distant, muted, like it belonged to another world entirely. Her fingers brushed lightly against her wrist, as if feeling for something that had always been there, something constant, something unseen. For the first time, it flickered. Not gone, not yet, but waiting. The air around her felt different, heavier, like the night itself was holding its breath. A breeze moved through the clearing, subtle but cold, stirring the edges of dresses, rustling leaves that had been still moments before. No one noticed. No one but her. And perhaps something far beyond them. Her smile deepened just slightly. Not warmer, not softer, just certain. Because the pain was still there, buried, quiet, but it no longer mattered. They had made their choice, and now, so had she. She took another step back, fully disappearing into the shadows beyond the celebration. No one called her name. No one stopped her. The pack was too busy celebrating what they believed they had gained to notice what they had just lost. And beneath the full moon, with that same calm, beautiful smile, she let something go. The night didn't react. The crowd didn't see. But somewhere, far beyond the reach of their understanding, fate did. And for the first time, it hesitated. The night grew quieter the farther she walked. The celebration faded behind her. Distant laughter, muffled cheers, a world that no longer belonged to her. She didn't look back. There was nothing left to see. The trees welcomed her into their shadows, their tall forms swallowing the moonlight as she stepped deeper into the forest. The air here was cooler, stiller, honest. For the first time that night, she exhaled fully, not in pain, not in relief, just release. Her steps slowed until she finally stopped beneath an ancient tree, its branches stretching wide as if it had stood there long before the pack, long before the alpha, long before her. The moonlight filtered through the leaves, brushing against her skin, calling to her, always calling. Her eyes lifted. For a moment, something ancient flickered in their depths, something far older than the girl the pack believed her to be. Something divine. Her fingers rose slowly, hovering over her chest, over the place where it had always lived, that quiet, invisible thread, the power she had given so freely, to him, to them. Every battle he survived, every enemy that missed its strike, every moment death should have claimed him, but didn't. It had been her, always her, unseen, unthanked, unchosen. Her lips curved again into that same soft smile, but this time there was no warmth in it. "They never knew," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the wind, and somehow that made it easier. Her hand pressed gently against her chest, and then she pulled. Not physically, not visibly, but something shifted, deep, ancient, final. The thread snapped, not with violence, not with sound, but with certainty. And in that moment, she withdrew everything, the protection, the quiet miracles, the unseen shield that had wrapped itself around the alpha, around the entire pack. Gone. All of it. The forest reacted first. The wind stilled, then shifted. A low, uneasy breeze moved through the trees, colder than before, brushing against her skin like a warning. Leaves rustled, not gently, but sharply, as if something unseen had just awakened. Far in the distance, a wolf howled, not in strength, but in confusion, in fear. Her gaze lowered slightly. She felt it immediately. The absence. Where her power had once flowed freely, there was now nothing. No connection, no pull, just silence. Back at the pack grounds, something flickered. A torch dimmed unexpectedly. Another sputtered. One went out completely. Laughter faltered for a brief second. No one understood why. Not yet. In the forest, her fingers slowly lowered to her side. It was done. No hesitation, no regret, because they had made their choice, and now she had made hers. The moon above seemed to dim behind a passing cloud, its light softening, as if it even had taken a step back, watching, waiting. The balance had shifted, and no one, not the alpha, not the pack, had any idea what was coming. But she did, and beneath the quiet, beneath the calm, something far more dangerous than heartbreak settled into place. Not anger, not revenge, but something colder, something final, indifference. She turned, disappearing deeper into the darkness of the forest, and behind her, the world she had protected began to unravel. Morning came, but it didn't feel like victory. The celebration from the night before lingered only in fragments, half-faded decorations, quiet murmurs, and a strange, unspoken tension that no one could explain. At first, it was small, almost unnoticeable. A hunting group returned early, empty-handed. That alone wasn't unusual. But the second group came back the same way. Then the third. Whispers began to spread. The prey just vanished. We tracked them for miles. Nothing. It's like the forest is hiding them. The elders dismissed it. Bad luck, they said. Nothing more. But by midday, the unease had grown. A patrol returned with injuries. Not fatal, but wrong. Claw marks that didn't match any known predator. Bites that looked distorted. As if something had struck without warning, without pattern. The pack healer worked quickly, her hands steady, but even she frowned. "These wounds," she murmured, "they don't feel natural." No one had an answer, and still, no one thought of her. By evening, the first real loss came. A scout didn't return, then another. Search parties were sent out, but the forest that had once been familiar now felt different. Paths twisted, scents faded too quickly. Even the wind carried confusion instead of guidance. The pack was losing its rhythm, its certainty, its edge. At the center of it all, the Alpha King stood, watching, silent, still. His gaze swept across the training grounds as warriors sparred below, but something about it felt off. Their movements were slower, less precise. A strike missed that should have landed. A defense failed that should have held. He noticed. Of course he did. He noticed everything. His jaw tightened slightly. Again, he ordered. The warriors reset. They moved. And again, something faltered. Subtle, but undeniable. His eyes narrowed. This wasn't weakness. This wasn't lack of skill. This was something else. Something missing. A flicker of memory surfaced, quick, sharp. Moments from past battles, times he should have fallen, but didn't. Times when something unseen had shifted the outcome, protected him, guided him, saved him. His expression darkened. At the time, he had dismissed it. Luck, instinct, chance. But now, there was no luck, no unseen hand correcting mistakes, no invisible force tilting things in their favor. Only failure, only loss. His gaze lifted toward the forest, toward the place where the shadows seemed deeper now, colder, and for the first time, a quiet, unfamiliar thought settled into his mind. Something is wrong, not just with the hunts, not just with the warriors, but with the pack itself, with the balance that had always been there, until now. Behind him, voices rose, another report, another injury, another problem. The noise built. Frustration, confusion, fear. But he barely heard it, because somewhere, deep beneath it all, there was a growing absence. One he couldn't name, one he couldn't explain, only feel. And though he didn't know why, his thoughts drifted, unbidden, to her. The girl who had stood in the crowd the night before, the one he had walked past, the one who had smiled. His chest tightened, just slightly, then stilled. No, this had nothing to do with her. It couldn't. And yet, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the shadows stretched longer across the land, the pack continued to lose, and whatever had once protected them was nowhere to be found. Night fell heavier than it should have. The pack grounds, once alive with confidence and strength, now carried something quieter, something uncertain. Even the guards at the borders stood more alert than usual, their movements sharper, their eyes scanning shadows that hadn't mattered before. At the center of it all, the Alpha King stood alone, his gaze fixed on nothing and everything. The reports from the day echoed in his mind. Failed hunts, missing scouts, unexplainable injuries. None of it made sense. It wasn't just bad luck. It wasn't weakness. It was as if something had been taken, something vital. His jaw tightened as he stepped forward, boots pressing into the cold earth. The night air brushed against his skin, but it didn't feel the same. It felt empty. And that's when the memory started. Unwelcome, sharp, unavoidable. The battlefield, blood, chaos, the sound of war tearing through the land. He remembered the moment clearly. A blade had been aimed straight for his throat. Too fast, too close. He hadn't been able to move in time. And yet, it never reached him. The attacker had faltered just for a second, enough for him to survive. At the time, he had called it instinct, luck. But now, that moment replayed again in his mind. Slower, clearer. The hesitation hadn't been natural. It had felt forced. Another memory followed. A different battle. He had been surrounded, outnumbered, certain death closing in from every direction. And then, a sudden shift. The wind had changed. The ground beneath his enemies had seemed to betray them, just enough for him to break free. He had lived. Again, and again, and again. Too many times. His breathing slowed. His mind sharpened. This wasn't coincidence. It couldn't be. Someone had been intervening. Silently. Consistently. Protecting him? His gaze darkened, lifting toward the moon above. Who? The question settled deep, heavy, because if someone had been there, why had they never revealed themselves? Why stay hidden? Why protect him without ever asking for anything in return? A flicker of something unfamiliar moved through him. Unease. Not from fear, but from the realization that he might not have been in control as he believed, that his victories might not have been entirely his own. His hands clenched slightly at his sides. No, he muttered under his breath. It didn't make sense. There was no one powerful enough in the pack to do that. No one capable of altering battles without being seen. No one. His thoughts stopped, abruptly, uninvited. A memory surfaced, not of war, not of blood, but of the ceremony, of her, standing there, quiet, unmoving, watching him. And then, that smile, calm, unshaken, as if she had already known how everything would unfold. His chest tightened again, slightly stronger this time, but just as quickly, he pushed it away. No, impossible. She was nothing more than... The thought didn't finish, because something deep within him hesitated. For the first time, the certainty he had always carried wavered. His gaze hardened, turning back toward the dark forest beyond the pack, toward the place where the shadows felt deeper now, colder, watching. If someone had been protecting him, if something had been holding the balance together, then the question wasn't just who, it was, why had they stopped? And as that thought settled in, the silence around him felt heavier than ever, because whoever it was, they were gone. And for the first time in his life, the Alpha King realized he might have been fighting battles he was never meant to survive alone. Long before the pack began to lose, she had already been fighting for them, alone, unseen. There were no witnesses to the nights she disappeared into the forest, her presence swallowed by darkness. No applause for the quiet moments where her power stretched beyond her body, reaching places no wolf could. Only silence. And sacrifice. The first time it happened, she had been younger. The war had just begun. The Alpha King, then not yet crowned, had been reckless, charging into battles like he had nothing to lose. She had watched from a distance, hidden, unnoticed, until the moment everything went wrong. An enemy had slipped through, a fatal strike aimed straight for his heart. He hadn't seen it. No one had. But she had. And without thinking, she reached for something deeper, something ancient, the power that lived within her, the blood of the moon goddess. The world had bent, just slightly. Enough. The strike missed. He lived. And from that moment on, she never stopped. Every battle, every ambush, every moment where death came too close, she was there. Not beside him, but around him. A shield no one could see, a force no one questioned. And every time she used it, it took something from her. A quiet exhaustion, a slow fading of warmth in her body, a weight she carried alone. But she never hesitated, because to her, he was worth it. The pack was worth it, even if they never knew, even if he never knew. A soft voice broke through the memory. "You're doing it again." She blinked. The present returned slowly, the forest, the quiet, the absence of what she had once given, and him, the boy standing a few steps away. Simple, unassuming, forgotten by most of the pack, just like she had been. He leaned casually against a tree, arms crossed, watching her with a small, knowing smile. "You disappear," he added gently. Even when you're standing right here. She looked at him for a moment. Really looked. He wasn't strong like the warriors, wasn't admired like the nobles, didn't carry status or power. But his eyes, they saw. Not through her, but into her. You shouldn't be out here, she said quietly. Neither should you. There was no accusation in his voice, only concern. Real, unfiltered, something she wasn't used to. The corner of his lips lifted slightly. The pack's a mess right now. Everyone's tense. Thought I'd find you where it's quieter. A pause. Then softer. Where you always go when something's wrong. Her chest tightened. Not painfully, just differently. Because he had noticed. He always noticed. Not just when she was present, but when she wasn't. Unlike him. Her gaze dropped briefly, then steadied. It's nothing, she said. He didn't believe her. She could see it. But he didn't push. He never did. Instead, he stepped a little closer, his voice quieter now. You don't have to carry everything alone. The words lingered. Simple, but heavier than anything else she had heard in a long time. Because he meant them. Not because of who she was, not because of what she could give, but because of her. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. The silence between them settled. Not empty, not heavy, just real. Behind them, far beyond the forest, the pack struggled, unraveling piece by piece. But here, for a moment, there was something steady, something grounded, something honest. And though the world had never seen her, he had. Always had. Even when she didn't realize it. The breaking point didn't come quietly. It came with blood. A full patrol had gone missing at dawn. By nightfall, what remained of them was carried back, barely alive, bodies torn in ways no one could explain. Warriors who had once stood unshaken now lay on the ground, groaning, their strength gone, their healing slowed. The pack healer worked frantically, her hands glowing faintly as she tried to mend wounds that refused to close. This shouldn't be happening, she whispered, panic creeping into her voice. They should be healing faster. They always do. But they weren't, and everyone knew it. Fear spread faster than any enemy ever could. The elders were called. The Alpha King stood at the center of the gathering, his presence commanding silence, but even that felt strained now, as if the very air resisted him. What is happening to this pack? His voice cut through the tension. No one answered, until an old woman stepped forward, slow, deliberate. Her eyes, clouded with age, seemed to see far more than anyone else in that moment. I wondered how long it would take, she said quietly. The Alpha's gaze sharpened. Speak. She didn't bow, didn't hesitate. Your strength, this pack's strength, was never yours alone. A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. What are you saying? One of the elders demanded. The old woman's gaze drifted past them, toward the forest, toward her. She continued, there was a blessing placed over this pack, a divine one. Silence fell, heavy, uncertain. No, another elder scoffed. If the moon goddess had blessed us, we would know. The old woman's lips curved faintly. That is the problem. The Alpha King took a step forward, his voice lower now. Explain. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, there was no hesitation. You were protected, she said, in every battle, every hunt, every moment death should have taken you. His chest tightened. Memories surged. That was no coincidence, she continued. It was her. A pause. Then, she is the daughter of the moon goddess. The words didn't just land. They struck. Hard. A wave of disbelief crashed through the pack. No, that's impossible. Who? But deep down, something shifted, because suddenly it made sense. Every impossible survival, every narrow escape, every victory that had come too easily, it had never been luck. It had been her. She gave you everything, the old woman said, her voice cutting through the chaos. Her power, her protection, her strength. A breath. And you didn't even see her. Silence followed. Crushing. Suffocating. Guilt began to seep in. Slow, relentless. The Alpha King didn't move, didn't speak, because the truth had already reached him. Her. The girl in the crowd, the one he walked past, the one who smiled. That smile, it wasn't acceptance, it was finality. His jaw tightened, something sharp and unfamiliar rising in his chest. Regret. Around him, the pack began to unravel. How do we fix this? Where is she? We need her back. Panic replaced pride. Fear replaced certainty. Because now they understood. They hadn't just lost a wolf, they had lost the very thing that kept them alive. And somewhere beyond the safety of their land, she was gone. And for the first time in their history, the pack realized that they were no longer protected. They were exposed. And it was their fault. The pack had never felt so small. Not in war, not in loss, not even in death. But now, they stood gathered once more beneath the same moon that had witnessed their pride and their mistake. Only this time, there was no celebration, only desperation. We have to bring her back. The words came from everywhere at once. Elders, warriors, even the nobles who had once looked past her like she didn't exist. She's the only one who can fix this. We're already losing too much. This won't stop. Fear had stripped them of everything else. Pride, status, certainty, all gone. And at the center of it all, the Alpha King stood in silence, his gaze fixed ahead, but his mind elsewhere. On her. On every moment he had overlooked, every time her presence had felt quieter than it should have been, every time something had saved him, and he had never questioned it. His jaw tightened. Regret wasn't loud. It didn't shout. It settled deep, heavy, unforgiving. You are your mate. The elder's voice cut through the noise, firm, final. You will go to her. You will bring her back. And this time, a pause. You will choose correctly. The words landed. Not as an order, but as truth. The pack watched him, waiting, because for the first time, their survival depended not on strength, but on her. A slow breath left him. Then he moved. Not with the certainty he once carried, but with something quieter, something heavier. And for the first time, he went to find her. The forest was darker than before, colder, unwelcoming, as if it no longer recognized him, or perhaps as if it never truly had. He found her where the silence lived, standing beneath the same ancient tree, still, unshaken, as if the world falling apart behind him had nothing to do with her. For a moment, he didn't speak, because now that he was here, the words didn't come as easily as he expected. Her back was to him, but she knew he was there. Of course she did. You shouldn't be here, she said softly. No surprise, no emotion, just truth. His chest tightened. I didn't know. The words left him before he could stop them. Rough, real. I didn't know it was you. Silence. The kind that stretches not empty, but full of everything left unsaid. She turned slowly, and when her eyes met his, there was nothing there. No love, no hurt, no longing, just distance. And somehow, that hurt more than anything else. The Alpha King took a step closer. I was wrong. Another step. I should have chosen you. The words felt inadequate the moment they left him, because they were. Too small, too late. Behind him, the pack had followed at a distance. Elders, warriors, even her former best friend. Watching, waiting, hoping. "Come back," one of the elders called out. "The pack needs you." Another voice followed. "We need you." Not him, not the alpha. Her. The girl they had ignored, the one they had cast aside. She looked at them. Really looked. And for a brief moment, something flickered. Not weakness, not forgiveness, just recognition. Then it was gone. Her gaze returned to him. "You're right," she said quietly. His breath stilled. "I should have been your choice." A pause, long enough to almost feel like hope. Then, "But I'm not anymore." The words didn't break. They didn't shake. They simply ended everything. The Alpha King's expression shifted just slightly, a crack in something that had always been unshakable. "You are my mate," he said, his voice lower now. "Maybe," she replied. Another step back. "But I'm not yours." Silence fell. Heavy. Final. Because this time, she was the one choosing, and she didn't choose him. Not anymore. The silence after her words lingered like something broken beyond repair. No one moved. No one spoke. Because what she had just done wasn't just rejection, it was defiance. Against the Alpha, against the bond, against fate itself. The Alpha King stood frozen, his gaze locked on her as if trying to understand something that had already slipped beyond his reach. "You don't mean that," he said, quieter now. Not commanding, not certain, almost pleading. Her expression didn't change. "I do." Simple. Final. And for the first time, he felt it, not as a thought, not as a suspicion, but as something deep, instinctive, undeniable. A pull, sharp, unyielding. It surged through him without warning, crashing into his chest with a force he couldn't ignore. His breath caught. His wolf stirred violently beneath the surface. Recognition. Late. Too late. His eyes darkened, locking onto her as the truth finally settled into place. Mine. The word echoed in his mind, raw and possessive, not out of control, but absolute. She was his mate, his true mate, not the one he had chosen, not the one the pack had celebrated. Her. It had always been her. A flicker of something, panic, anger, realization, passed through him. And then he stepped forward. "You are mine." The words came out stronger now, driven by instinct, by something older than pride. But she didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't respond. Because that pull, that bond, she felt it too. Of course she did. It had always been there. Quiet, patient, waiting. But now, it no longer mattered. Her gaze held his, steady and unshaken. "No," she said softly. The word cut deeper than anything else that night. "I was." A pause. Then, "I chose you when you didn't choose me." Each word landed, measured, unforgiving. "And now, I choose myself." The forest seemed to still around her, as if even the world was listening. Behind the Alpha King, the pack shifted uneasily, tension rising, confusion spreading, because something was happening, something bigger than any of them. A bond being denied, and that was never without consequence. A step forward broke the stillness, not from him, but from behind her. The orphan boy. Quiet, steady. He didn't stand beside her as a challenge. He stood there as something else entirely. Support. Choice. And for the first time, the Alpha King saw him. Really saw him. Not as nothing, not as invisible, but as someone who had been there when he hadn't. Something dark flickered in his eyes. Too late. Everything was too late. Her hand moved slightly, not reaching for the boy, not claiming him, but not rejecting his presence either. And that alone was enough. A shift. A decision. Not spoken, but understood. The Alpha's chest tightened, something sharp twisting deep inside. Loss. Real. Unavoidable. You can't walk away from this, he said, his voice lower now, strained. The bond is not enough, she interrupted gently. Silence. Heavy. Absolute. Because she was right. It wasn't enough. Not anymore. The wind picked up suddenly, colder, sharper, carrying something unfamiliar through the trees. A warning. The moon above flickered behind a passing shadow, its light dimming just slightly. And in that moment, something changed, not just between them, but beyond them. Because her choice wasn't just personal, it was power. And power always came with consequence. Her gaze lifted briefly toward the sky, then returned to him one last time. No anger. No love, just truth. You made your choice, she said quietly. A breath. Then, so did I. And as she turned away, the air seemed to tighten, the forest shifted, and far beyond the borders of the pack, something stirred, because the moment she chose herself was the moment everything else began to move, not toward peace, but towards something far more dangerous. War. The forest did not welcome him anymore. He felt it the moment she turned away. The air grew colder, heavier, as if something unseen had drawn a line, and he stood on the wrong side of it. She walked forward without hesitation. Not toward him, not back to the pack, but away. And this time, there was no invisible force guiding her back. No quiet thread tying her to him. Nothing. The Alpha King took a step forward, then another, as if closing the distance could undo what had already been done. You can't leave, he said, his voice tighter now, edged with something raw. Not authority, not command, desperation. She didn't stop, didn't even slow. I already have. Each word fell softly into the night, but they carried more weight than any order he had ever given. Behind him, the pack shifted uneasily, their murmurs rising again, fear now laced with something deeper. Panic, because they could feel it too. The shift, the absence, the loss of something they had never understood, and now might never get back. You are bound to me, he said again, stronger this time, as if saying it louder would make it true. His wolf pushed forward, restless, agitated. Mine. The instinct roared louder now, clawing through his chest. But she felt it. Of course she did. That pull, that bond. It brushed against her like a distant echo. Familiar, once comforting, now irrelevant. She stopped. Not for him, but because she chose to. Slowly she turned. Her eyes met his again, and there it was. The truth he could no longer deny. The recognition that came too late. She was his mate, his true mate. Not the one he had chosen in pride, but the one fate had given him from the beginning. And he had walked past her. A crack formed in something deep within him. Realization, regret, loss. You are my mate, he said again, but now it sounded different. Not a claim, a confession. Her gaze didn't soften, didn't flicker, because she had already lived that truth, alone. "I was," she replied quietly. A breath passed between them. "And you weren't mine when it mattered." Silence. Sharp, unforgiving. Behind her, a quiet presence stepped closer. The orphan boy. He didn't speak, didn't challenge. He simply stood there, steady, unmoving, a contrast to everything the Alpha had been. And that was enough. The Alpha King's eyes shifted to him, something dark and possessive flashing briefly, but it faded just as quickly. Because for the first time, he understood. It wasn't about strength, or status, or power. It was about presence. And he had not been there. Her hand moved slightly, not reaching, not claiming, but allowing him to stand near, allowing herself to not be alone. And in that moment, the choice became real. She had chosen herself, and in doing so, she had chosen a path that did not include him. The bond pulsed once more, sharp, demanding, but it found no answer, no return, no surrender. "You would walk away from your mate?" he asked, quieter now, not in anger, but in disbelief. Her lips curved slightly, not in a smile, but in something calmer, stronger. "I already did." The words settled into the air like a final verdict, because this wasn't rejection born from pain anymore. It was clarity, choice, power. The wind rose again, stronger this time, carrying a low, distant sound through the forest, something unfamiliar, something dangerous. Her gaze lifted briefly toward the horizon, then returned to him one last time. "This doesn't end here," she said softly. "Not a threat, a truth." Because the moment she withdrew, the moment she chose herself, she didn't just break a bond, she broke a balance. And now, everything that had been held back was coming. She turned again, and this time, she didn't look back. The Alpha King stood there, unmoving, as the distance between them became something he could no longer cross. Because she wasn't his anymore. And somewhere, beyond the borders of their world, war had already begun. The distance between them should have ended it. It should have been final, but it wasn't, because something in him refused to let her go. The Alpha King stood there for a long moment, watching her walk away, feeling something tear deeper with every step she took. This wasn't defeat. This wasn't loss. This was something far worse. Finality. And he couldn't accept it. Not like this. Not after realizing the truth. Not after understanding, too late, that she had been everything. "Wait!" The word came out rough, unsteady. She didn't stop. His chest tightened. Something in him broke, and for the first time, the Alpha King moved without pride, without power, without control. He dropped to his knees. The sound echoed through the forest, heavy, undeniable. Gasps rose behind him. The pack froze, because the Alpha King did not kneel, not for anyone, not for anything. But now, he did. "For the pack," he said, his voice low, strained. "For me." A breath. "Come back." The words weren't loud, but they carried. Through the trees, through the silence, through everything that had been broken. She stopped. Slowly. The forest held its breath. Time seemed to stretch, fragile, uncertain, and for one fleeting moment, it almost felt like something could change, like something could still be saved. Then, the sky split open. A violent crack tore through the heavens, light bursting across the darkness in a way no one had ever seen before. The moon shifted, darkened, and then it bled. A deep, unnatural red spread across its surface, casting the entire forest in a crimson glow. The air turned heavy, oppressive, ancient. Every wolf in the clearing dropped instantly, forced to their knees by a power they could not fight. Fear surged, primal, uncontrollable, because this was not their world anymore. A voice echoed across the land, not heard, felt deep within their bones. Daughter. It was vast, endless, divine. Your time among them is over. Silence followed, but it wasn't empty. It was absolute. She stood still beneath the blood-red moon, her figure now something more than what they had known, more than the quiet girl they had overlooked, more than the one they had rejected. Power moved around her, subtle but undeniable, ancient, awakening. Slowly, she turned. Her gaze found him, still on his knees, still reaching, still too late. And for the first time, he saw her clearly, not as the girl he had known, but as something far beyond him. Her eyes held his, and there was no love left in them, no softness, no longing, only power and something colder, final. A quiet understanding passed between them, not spoken, but undeniable. This was the end, and the beginning. Her form began to shift, not physically, but in presence. The air around her shimmered, bending slightly, as if reality itself was adjusting to her very presence. The wind rose, the trees bowed, the world responded. And then, she was gone. No sound, no trace, just absence, complete. The forest stilled. The sky slowly began to close. The red glow faded, and the moon returned to its place, as if nothing had happened. But everything had. The Alpha King remained on his knees, frozen, because this time there was no doubt, no confusion, no second chance. She was gone, and with her went everything he had failed to see. And far beyond the reach of the pack, beyond the forest, beyond their land, something ancient stirred, because the daughter of the moon goddess had returned, and the world was about to change. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Don't forget to leave a comment and tell us what you think about the story. We love hearing from you. Your support helps keep this channel alive and bringing you amazing, interesting, and powerful alpha stories. Thank you for being here.